Infidelity, violence, lack of support, lack of sexual intimacy are some of the few problems married couples face. And without divorce law, the question is, are infidelity, violence, lack of support, lack of sexual intimacy grounds for annulment in the Philippines? Let's look at some cases of infidelity, lack of support, lack of sexual intimacy, extramarital sex, and what the Supreme Court says about them. In the case of Katrina Tiongliko, with GR number 218630, a case decided in 2018 where the spouses lack sexual intimacy because they fight so much that they lost any intimacy between them, and the husband insisted to have a maid sleep in their bedroom every night to see to the needs of their son. And other nights, he would go out partying and drinking. The psychiatrist whom Katrina consulted with said that this personality disorder is permanent, incurable, and deeply integrated within his psyche, and that it was present but repressed at the time of the celebration of their marriage, and the onset was in early adulthood. His maladaptive and irresponsible behaviors interfered with his capacity to provide mutual love, fidelity, respect, mutual help, and support to his wife. The lower court granted the petition to have the marriage declared null and void. However, the Supreme Court reversed it, saying that it has been held that psychological incapacity has been intended by law to be confined to the most serious cases of personality disorders, clearly demonstrative of an utter insensitivity or inability to give meaning and significance to the marriage. Psychological incapacity must be characterized by gravity. It must be grave and serious such that the party would be incapable of carrying out the ordinary duties required in a marriage. It must be rooted in the history of the party antedating the marriage, although the overt manifestations may emerge only after the marriage. In incurability, it must be incurable. Or even if it were otherwise, the cure would be beyond the means of the party involved. The next case is the case of Mirasol Castillo with GR number 214064 that was decided on the 6th of February 2017. Mirasol, tired of her husband's infidelity, filed a complaint to nullify her marriage. She said that her husband resumed philandering. Their relatives and friends saw him with different women, and one time, she just arrived from a trip and returned home to surprise his family. But to her surprise, she caught him in a compromising act with another woman, and he did not explain or apologize. So she left the conjugal dwelling and stopped any communication with him for 10 years. And she did not receive support for her children from her husband. The psychologist's psychological evaluation report concluded that her husband is psychologically incapacitated to fulfill the essential marital obligations. And it speaks of gravity as he was not able to carry out the normative and ordinary duties of marriage and family, shouldered by any married man, existing in ordinary circumstances. He just cannot perform his duties and obligations as a husband, as he entered into marriage for his own self-satisfaction and gratification, manipulative and denigrate the petitioner for his own pleasures and satisfaction. In the process, the husband was unable to assume his marital duties and responsibilities to his wife. He failed to render mutual help and support. The lower court granted her petition and declared her marriage null and void. However, the Office of the Solicitor General argues that Mirasol failed to establish from the totality of evidence the gravity, juridical antecedents, and incurability of her husband's alleged narcissistic personality disorder. And the Supreme Court said irreconcilable differences, sexual infidelity or perversion, emotional immaturity and responsibility, and the like, do not by themselves warrant a finding of psychological incapacity under Article 36, as the same may only be due to a person's refusal or unwillingness to assume the essential obligations of marriage. In order for sexual infidelity to constitute as psychological incapacity, the person's unfaithfulness must be established as a manifestation of a disordered personality, completely preventing the person from discharging the essential obligations of the marital state. There must be a proof of a natal or supervening disabling factor that effectively incapacitated him from complying with the obligation to be faithful to his spouse. It is indispensable that the evidence must show a link, medical or the like, between the acts that manifest psychological incapacity and the psychological disorder itself. The court finds that there exists insufficient factual or legal basis to conclude that her husband's sexual infidelity and irresponsibility can be equated with psychological incapacity as contemplated by law, and therefore reversed the judgment and declared that the marriage still subsists. Another is the case of Spouses Scarlett, which was decided in 2017, and it's a case of infidelity and extramarital sex and the absence of support. The Supreme Court finds the evidence insufficient to dissolve the marriage and went on to explain that the Constitution sets out a policy of protecting and strengthening the family as a basic social institution, and marriage is the foundation of the family. Marriage as an inviolable institution protected by the state cannot be dissolved at the whim of the parties. In petitions for the declaration of nullity of marriage, the burden of proof to show the nullity of the marriage lies with the complainant or the plaintiff, unless the evidence presented clearly reveals a situation where the parties or one of them could not have validly entered into a marriage by reason of a grave and serious psychological illness existing at the time it was celebrated. Hence, they are compelled to uphold the indissolubility of the marital tie. So, in sum, infidelity, extramarital sex, lack of intimacy without whatever proof you need to provide to establish that it is equivalent to psychological incapacity, then the answer to your question is no. Therefore, before you tie the knot, choose the right person. And if you subscribe and be a subscriber to this channel, you will be notified on how to choose the right partner or how to make a marriage healthy. Thank you.